All right, sports fans, we're going to try something new tonight. Believe it or not, we're not going to do a tank. We're going to do aircraft. We're going to do World War II fighters. I've got several World War II fighters, and so what we want to do is talk about World War II fighter planes and their role in the wars. But tonight we're just going to specifically focus on an airplane, and the one we decided to pick is probably one of the most iconic aircraft of World War II, is the Messerschmitt BF 109. It's designed by Willie Messerschmitt back in 1934, and they built a slug of them. A bunch of different variants, but I found out some interesting things that Adam told me is about they couldn't change it very much. So what I want to do is turn the time over to Adam, and let's talk about some of the development that started out early, and maybe some of the changes that happened over the years, if they had any. And I think the most interesting thing is how many they built of them. So let's maybe build up to that, because I was astounded on how many they built.
It was designed in 34. Its first flight was in 35. It would start with a Junkers Jumo 210 series engine, V12, inverted V12.
Oh, they built a lot of inverted V12s. Everybody did that.
Yeah,
how many horsepower did it start out with?
It started off with, at max, so I don't know if our listeners would know this. I didn't know this, but a plane's horsepower changes depending on the elevation.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
You would know that because you're a pilot.
Yeah, I'm a pilot, sure. The manifold pressure has everything to do with horsepower.
Gotcha. Yeah, so at most it was making 690 horsepower.
Which back then in 1935, that's a lot.
Right, yeah. It did great when it first came out. It served in the Spanish Civil War. It would serve all throughout World War II. Some interesting things about it.
They didn't quit making them until 1945, so they were in production from, 1936 when they first started production?
It was introduced really into production in 1937.
And that's when they went to the Spanish War. Mm-hmm. But they built them all the way through 1945.
Correct. The Luftwaffe made them to 45. The Spanish Air Force would actually continue to make them to 65.
Oh, okay. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, huh?
Yep. It would come as a result of a design competition between a few different aircraft manufacturers. Obviously, Messerschmitt designed this one. Arado had an AR-80 V3. Focke-Wulf had a 159 V3, and Henkel had an AG-112 V4. All of those will participate in the competition, but ultimately it was the Messerschmitt that won out.
Okay. Well, I read it was kind of a panic thing when they won the competition. They finally said, we got to have one, and chose that one, or was that not true?
Yeah, that's right. What happened was they were in the middle of having the competition when they got word that England, the Royal Air Force, had commissioned the production of the Spitfire.
We'll do a quick flyby of a Spitfire.
We'll talk more about its comparative stats later on, but that's why the competition had to be concluded early, and the Messerschmitt was the winner.
Okay. Turned out to be a good choice, I think, actually.
Yeah. As you said, it would be the most produced fighter plane in the history of fighter planes. There was 34,248 produced.
God, that's a lot of those things.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's like T-34s, 80,000 of them made. But these are airplanes.
Right. Or the Sherman with the 40,000.
Yeah, geez. I mean, they didn't build 40,000, 34,000 P-51s or anything like that. I don't know. We haven't studied P-51 yet, so we don't know how many they built. All right. So, a very popular plane. At first, I don't think the pilots liked to fly them because of the low tail wheel and the high. They had these silly wheels that were close together here, and it was very unstable on the ground. Plus, the pilots couldn't see over the nose of the airplane when they started, but luckily, when they put the throttle in, within just a few feet, the plane would
even out
so they could see down the runway. But, for the first 10 or 15 seconds after they put the throttle in, they had to make sure. And then they had problems landing them just because they had that little narrow landing gear there. But that's what made it so easy to build, though, because the engine mount and the landing gear struts and the wing spars were all one piece.
That makes things easy.
Yeah. They stuck the engine on. Well, it was one big bracket type of thing, for lack of better terms, a bulkhead. But it mounted the engine, the landing gear, and the wings all on one big piece of machined out steel. And it contributed to the strength of it, plus the production, easy in for production, and helped with the cost and everything. But it made it for a really strong airplane, with the exception the landing gear was kind of funky. But, but other than that, what sort of armament did it have? I see some machine guns on here somewhere.
Yes, you do. It often had two 13mm synchronized MG-131 machine guns and one 20mm MG-151-20 cannon. They
put that in the nose. This one doesn't show it, but they had a cannon come out the center of the propeller spinner.
Yeah, they called it a motor cannon.
Yeah, the motor cannon. And then they had those, I think those other lighter machine guns here, and then I think the later ones had I think this is why this is a later version.
Yeah,
they have the 7.62s out here on the wings, which is basically a NATO round,
Two 20-meter MG-151 20 underwing cannon.
Yeah, those would be those. And then, so it's fairly well armed, but that cannon sticking out the thing. I remember reading about the P-38s. The reason the P-38s were so successful in shooting planes because they put all the cannon in the nose of a P-38. So when the pilot had to shoot something, he could see right where the tracers would go.
Right.
Versus some of the other planes where tracers would go out and they'd have to kind of estimate where they go. Same way with the Messerschmitt. The reason they were successful as they had the cannon coming right here, out here, and then they had the two 30 mils or whatever they are up here in the cowling.
The 13 mil.
13 mil. And they had the 20 mil cannon shooting out the front. Now, I remember the 20 mil cannon didn't have a lot of shots. Couldn't carry too much ammo on that, but still, if somebody had sights and close, throw one of those big old 20mm shots at them.
All right, what else do you want to know about the Messerschmitt?
You told me something that blew me away today. Why were there so many Messerschmitt aces?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. The Allied forces, they rotated out their pilots. After, I don't know the amount of sorties, but after a certain amount of sorties or missions, they would rotate them out. They'd put them in training. They'd send them home.
About 25 missions, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
I know it was 25 missions for the bombers. I don't know what the fighter pilots. But I think the fighter pilots re-upped a lot too, though.
Yeah.
They'd run the training, then they'd sign up for it some more. So I think the fighter pilots, if they survived, liked the hunt more than the bombers did.
Right. But so you go off of you go on your 25 sorties and then you'd rotate out, and then maybe you'd re-up, but that wasn't guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
Well, the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, had a very different policy. If you were alive and could fly a plane, you were flying a plane. And so there's a lot of German pilot aces, which means that they got more than five kills, because they had to fly. They weren't rotated out. They didn't have to re-up on their sorties. They were out there till they were dead or too injured to fly.
Huh. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was reading some diaries of some of those tank commanders, though, and that's just the way they were. they got their tank blow up and their crew shot up for a reason. They just had a new tank.
Yeah.
They didn't have an option of going home like we did. So anyway, that this is okay. What was the main competition or the main nemesis for the ME 105, 109?
The BF 109.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or ME 109, but either one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on who you're asking, because the Allies called it the ME 109. Well, it depended on which front you were at.
Let's talk about the Eastern Front because that started first.
Yeah, the Yak 1 or the Yakovlev 1, named after the designer whose last name it was Yakovlev, Alexander Yakovlev.
I wish I had different pictures. I mean, there was a lot of pictures, but what I was amazed at, that they all look the same. They all have the V12 engine in front. They all have the mono strut construction. And the Yak 1 and 3 look remarkably like a Spitfire.
They do.
Yeah.
And speaking of Spitfire, that would be the nemesis of the West.
Okay, so here we got...
We actually have a model here. Yep.
I tried... You can't believe how hard I looked to buy a Yak 1 model. I think...
Are they a rare?
I mean,
rare model.
Not in the Forces of Valor or 21st Century. They're non-existent. I know I've seen them in the past. I know I've seen them in the 18th scale, but I never bought them. I bought every single one. Now, I wish I would have bought them back, 10 years ago when I started collecting them.
Sure.
But the Spitfire, very similar to, but the Spitfire came out after the. Well, no, you said they were developing them about the same time.
Yeah, they were called into production. They were they had already determined that it was the plane they were going to make when the Messerschmitt was determined to be the winner and commissioned as well.
Yeah. Now, these have a very similar design. They got the real spindly little close together landing gear similar to the Messerschmitt, and they both have a V12. Now the V12 in the Spitfire, I don't think was inverted. It was the V up, where the Messerschmitt was a V, was an inverted V12.
Yeah, and you can kind of see that based on the exhaust. Obviously, the exhaust coming out.
Yeah. Now, weren't you telling me that by the end of the war they really amped up the motors in those things?
They did. Yeah, so originally, as I mentioned before, they started off with a Junkers Jumo 210, which at most is 690 horsepower. By the end of the war, they were producing 1,455 horsepower. Let me get that right. 1,455 horsepower with a Daimler-Benz inverted V12.
Wow. Yeah, the same one they were putting in the Focke-Wulf 190, wasn't it?
I think, I don't know.
Or was that a Maybach? I don't know. We'll find out when we do a Focke-Wulf 190.
We'll find out when we do the Focke-Wulf.
We have a Focke-Wulf 90, and a 262, but those are for a different night. We're talking about Messerschmitt or BF 109s tonight. Mm-hmm. So, here's the main nemesis of the...
The specific name for that engine before we move on is the Daimler-Benz 605 A1 V12 inverted liquid-cooled piston engine.
And let's see what this looks like here, like that.
That's the Spitfire there.
So there's a good, both of them. I'm not taking over your job. I'm just doing this for a minute. And, so they're both, very, very similar. Both V12s, both... Okay, we didn't talk about specifications. How fast would it fly?
Yeah, so with that, the later version, with the Daimler-Benz.
Is that the G and older, or what?
Yeah. These are the stats for a G6 in particular.
Okay.
Cruising speed was 370 miles an hour. Top speed 399 miles an hour.
I hope you guys like us getting away from the tanks a little bit and getting into the airplanes. My first love was the airplanes. I started collecting the 21st century 18th scale airplanes before I started collecting the tanks. And then after I bought all the 18th scale, I had to find something else, so I found the 18th scale tanks to buy. Then after that, I started getting into the 32nd scale stuff. So I started 32nd scale tanks. My last thing I've been buying has been the 32nd scale airplanes, but I think they're just all really great, and the history behind them all. Like I said, we all know they're killing machines, and they're deadly bastards in the hand of a skilled pilot. But you know, mechanically and development-wise, and as a mechanical engineers that we are, I find these things just fun to figure out, and just a certain romance about a fighter pilot that is been real fun.
One thing I wanted to mention, German planes, I think more than any other production of the German military at the time, relied on concentration camps.
Ooh.
The Luftwaffe was...
That's nasty.
Yeah. The Luftwaffe was more than willing to use human experimentation for hypothermia, for high altitude ejections. And so when you're talking about remembering that these are killing machines, not only is a plane a killing machine, but the Luftwaffe and the Messerschmitt BF 109 was made by killing people.
Well, by a lot of concentrate. Now, that kind of pisses on the Wheaties, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, because I didn't know that. Now, the dirty bastards use the concentration camp Jewish prisoners to build the Messerschmitt. I don't know if I like that or not. I don't think I like that very much. Well, anyway, that's part of history, so we're not going to gloss over history.
Nope.
No, unlike the woke people do now.
Right.
Yeah. We're not woke here, by the way. So, just so you know. All right. We'll, with that happy note, we'll sign off for tonight. Do you got anything else you want to add?
No.
All right.
Subscribe, damn it.